Namaste. Welcome to the Conscious Convo podcast. I am your host and teacher, Pippa Leslie. I'm here to share everything I learn, see, and channel. This podcast is for the conscious and curious beings who are ready to dive deeper into spirituality. I am so grateful you are here. Hi guys, welcome back. So today I'm really excited to be joined by Kev O'Neill, who is a breath coach. Now, before I let him speak, Kev was a big part of my spiritual journey. He helped me get into breath work. It was 2021, I think it was. We did a breathwork session and a bit of cold water therapy, which blew me away, absolutely blew me away. And I know a lot of you are doing breathwork and you're doing cold water therapy. It seems to be huge right now. It's everywhere. It's going on everywhere. But I think I wanted to bring Kev on today to kind of talk a little bit behind the scenes of what's going on with this, because I think these new trends come in, don't they, Kev? And everyone goes crazy about them. But actually, you've got to do some work around it as well. It's not just go for a cold water therapy and have breath work and you're fixed, So I think it is something that people are just kind of trying and they're enjoying, but there's so much behind it, isn't there? So hi, Kev.
Hi, Ben. It's lovely to see you. Thanks so
You
much
too.
for having me on.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited. People are going to love this episode. I just know they are. I know we've briefly just been chatting before we started, and there's so much we want to talk about. But first off, I just want you to kind of tell the listeners how you got into breath work and what it's done for your life.
Well, I first got into breath work around about the third trimester with my mum. And I was practicing to breathe before I came out, which is why you can feel hiccuping in your tummy sometimes when you've got a baby. And then I took my first breath in 1976, and I've been doing it ever since, breath work. And that's what breath work is. Mm-hmm. It's the working of your respiratory system. And it's fashionable at the moment. Like you mentioned, I'm a breath coach, a respiratory health coach. And I'm working with people that have got asthma, COPD, long COVID, anxiety, panic disorder, claustrophobia, autonomic dysfunction through chronic hyperventilation, people with all sorts of ailments, cancer. And I'm also working with people who have suffered from trauma and PTSD and just life in general. And your breath is intrinsically sort of connected to everything that you've ever been through, from your first gasp, your first breath that you take when you're born, to the very, very last exhale that you let go of before you finish. Mm. So yeah.
It's an important thing, isn't it? I think we forget, we're breathing consistently every day and we don't realize that. That's one thing that it taught me, breath work, was to be grateful for, your lungs and your heart, because it just beats for you. And there's so much spirituality behind it too. But I think scientifically, people are, it's said that people breathe wrong. We all breathe wrong and we all don't take more conscious breaths. And I do know from trying breath work over the last year, especially here in New Zealand, is every time I do breath work, I know we want to talk about this word release, but every time I do breath work, I feel like something in my body happens. So whether it's, like you mentioned, it's a chemical thing going on or it's a nervous system thing going on, you know more about this than me, but I just feel whenever I do breath work, I lay down, I start doing the deep breaths in and out, and I start crying. My body just feels the tingling. I feel like something is happening within my body. So can you explain that?
We get a beautiful word, happening. That's something that happens in the body. That's probably the best way I've heard it described.
Yeah,
it's a happening. It's not necessarily a release. And I think we spoke about that briefly, didn't we? And
yeah.
There's a lot of facilitators out there that are bounding the word around release in terms of trauma. What we have to understand is that trauma is stored in the body for very specific reasons. And I think everybody's witnessed trauma at some point. I think in terms of how the organism responds to birth, everybody experiences trauma. It's traumatic to be forced through a narrow canal after being in 9 months in the most safest, warmest, most comfortable place that you can ever be in, that you ever will be in, before as an organism you pass. So everybody's been through trauma. So people are saying, well, come to do some breath work, release your traumas, which is kind of selling, but it's not entirely accurate, because you cannot really release or let go of forever something that is instinctively keeping you alive.
Yeah.
And that's your autonomic response to sort of get you from vulnerability back to safety. And it's been doing that since you were born. So if you're in terms of this parasympathetic nervous system, this rest and digest safety that we have, and then we have the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, danger, fear. We're 9 months in safety. In fact, it's the most, like I say, it's the most safest place you'll ever be. For 9 months, the organism had to sort of live in that environment for 9 months. That's a long time. And then all of a sudden, at the end of that 9 months, you're forced to a narrow canal. If your mum's hyperventilating, which happens a lot of the time, you're struggling for oxygen because of, sometimes because of the Bohr effect, and because mum's hyperventilating, you're getting less oxygen. So you come out, you're cold, you're frightened, and you gasp for the first time. And there are breathing centers in the brain, one of them being the pre-Botzinger complex, the medulla, the amygdala, witnessing your breathing. And it recognizes that breathing through the mouth there is making you vulnerable, or it's connected to fear, the fear response, vulnerability. And then all the way through your life, then it will carry on a suit to get you back to safety. It will get you to breathe through the mouth, which is why panic attacks look like that. They're through the mouth. When we're crying, when we're upset, we're vulnerable. The sharp breaths in through the mouth, and your body is watching you. In terms of The Body Keeps the Score, the book, the amazing book by Bessel van der Kolk.
I've got that on the bookshelf. I need to read it.
Please read it. If you read that book, you'll understand why you keep having these happenings when you're breathing, because it will explain to you why that's happening. It's because of your body's, the organism's amazing ability to go back into the past of everything that it's recorded through your life, to use whatever it is that makes you most frightened to get you back to safety, or in this case, to get you to stop hyperventilating. Big explanation there.
Well, I just remember when you talked about the shallow breaths when you're anxious, because I remember before the wedding, last year towards like October, November, I was having the heart flutters, the shallow breathing, that deep feeling in the tummy, and I just knew it was anxiety, and I was wondering what it was, and I just knew that anxiety was creeping in because of different stresses that were happening in my life, and the stress of the wedding coming up and everything, that was, life can happen. And I just remember thinking, breath is going to be the thing that helps me through this. But I just think back to when I first did the breathwork session with you in 2021. I just remember, you teaching us about when you get in the cold water, it wants you to go into that shock, when you're getting the cold water. And I remember, doing the breath work with you. That was the first experience I've ever done with breath work. And I left my body. I completely left my body. And this is spiritually. I remember being in nature. It was a nice spring day, I think it was. It was like May or June. And I remember I knew my body was doing the breath work, but I feel like my soul was over in the trees, just looking at the trees and enjoying this, enjoying nature. And I just remember when you told us we'd held our breath for like 2 minutes, and I was like, what? And and everything kind of started to come back, because I did scuba diving, and I remember the diving instructor saying, start to practice breath work when you can. I never did, I never did, because it was my early 20s, and I was like, oh, whatever. But if I'd done practice breath work, I could have, got a lot more out of my tank, when I was doing my diving. But I just remember hitting that cold water. And what was that water, Kev? About 6 degrees?
It would have been a little bit warmer than that at that time of year, maybe sort of 8 degrees.
Yeah, but still cold. Yeah.
But still possibly cold. Anything lower than 20 degrees is cold water.
Yeah.
If you go to Susanna Solberg on Instagram, she explains a lot about how your body reacts to the cold water therapy. Like I say, there's a bit of a craze about it at the moment. I don't personally get people to breathe and hold their breath like that anymore.
No.
For safety reasons, I don't, and for also for reasons that it's not really necessary to understand what your body is doing or to connect mind to body.
Yeah.
So I got people to do it there because it was quite dynamic.
Yeah.
In terms of what it gave you on the day and what it gave my clients on the day, and it worked. And on a couple of occasions a week, I'll still do hyperventilation techniques, but not to that kind of level anymore. The reason why is because as a Buteyko breathing instructor, and I'll talk, if I can, a little bit about Buteyko.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I'm registered with a guy called Patrick McKeown in Ireland as one of his breathwork instructors, one of his Buteyko instructors. And I'll be going over to Ireland in February doing my advanced oxygen advantage with him as well, which is amazing. The oxygen advantage is just incredible. Lots of folk doing this in Australia at the moment. And this is about slowing down the breath. This is about changing your biochemistry, thinking about the breath on 3 dimensions. So you've got your biomechanics, so how you breathe, using the diaphragm, whether you're breathing through your nose or breathing through your mouth. If then this alters then the biochemistry, so that's the next sort of pillar. And then after that, then you're sort of looking at how many times per minute you're breathing, how much air are you taking into your lungs, so your cadence, your flow, or your volume of air. And all these 3 factors, when you put them all together, they should hopefully start to improve your health. The way if you breathe too fast, you're offloading sometimes too much carbon dioxide. If you're breathing too shallow, you're getting rid of too much CO2, and this affects how the body uptakes oxygen. And if you're hyperventilating, and hyperventilating doesn't really look like what you think it looked like. You know, people don't go around panting. You know, hyperventilation looks a bit like this. If you watch my hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so that actually doesn't look like hyperventilation. People say, well, I always breathe like that. That looks quite normal. Whereas in theory, we should be breathing about 5 to 5.5 seconds in and about 5.5 seconds out. And this is sort of agreed by respiratory health doctors and professors and all over the world. They've all agreed that 5.5 seconds is optimum for respiratory health. So this is like this. So this is about 5.5 seconds. So you're breathing in. Should be a natural pause at the bottom, and then you breathe in. So this is much slower. And we, as human beings, we don't breathe like that anymore.
No.
And there are hundreds of factors into why we don't breathe like that anymore. All the way from genetics, breastfeeding, all the way up to chronic stress. And they all play a role in terms of how safe the animal feels, which can affect how much they hyperventilate. And when I say the animal, I mean human beings. Yeah.
But it's interesting because when I think about now when I'm breathing, it's mine are like 2 or 3 seconds in and out. And it's just, for me, it connects me to the fact that I spoke about this with someone on the podcast last week about this fast pace that we live in, you know, this fast, everything's next day delivery, fast food, everything's so quick now, you know, we're kind of becoming impatient. So to take time to do that breath work takes patience and consistency. And I think sometimes it's because we are living this fast paced life that the breath is kind of mirroring that. You know, it's like, if I think of a dog, like I've got Willow here with me now, like I watch them breathe all the time and they breathe properly. You know, I know they pant to let go of the heat and stuff like that, but I just love watching animals breathe. That's something I've been really interested in because it's like, you know, it's like people say, how should you breathe? And I think for me, it's just being more conscious. You know, you can't monitor your breath 24/7, the same as you can't monitor your thoughts. You have 70,000 thoughts a day. You can't monitor each one of them, but you can take time in your day to go, let me just check my breathing, you know, and it's a big thing that I think it helps people to connect, doesn't it? It's the present moment as well.
It does, and I think the thing is that, like you said, everything's so fast paced at the moment that people are finding it so difficult. I mean, these things, these phones are a bit of a nuisance with these sort of 7-second scrolling up and down, and you're witnessing kind of false environments that stimulate your biochemistry. So sometimes you can be watching things that are releasing dopamine, serotonin, and you're witnessing things sometimes that can even release adrenaline in the body. So you might be looking at something that's quite pleasant on there. This is happening to all of us, including teenagers and children. They're witnessing something that's quite pleasant. And then the next minute they'll swipe up and they'll see something that's not very pleasant, a tsunami and cars and people being swept off a beach. But what they'll do is they'll gasp when they see it. So they'll and they'll hold their breath. Now, the body kind of has a habit of remembering these things. But also, when you do that, sometimes you can actually release a little bit of adrenaline. Unfortunately, that mechanism is to get us back to safety as animals, from a time when we were being chased by things that were trying to eat us. So that same mechanism, that same adrenaline release, we're getting now in our bedrooms and just sat in our cars, and it's got nowhere to go. We're not running to run it off or to fight off the animal or to flee for our lives. That adrenaline just runs through the body. And that is the origins, really, of ADHD in human beings, not just in children, but in human beings in general. And in a recent study in America, 80% of children, in a massive study that have ADHD, 80% of them are mouth breathers. They're snoring at night. And snoring is dysfunctional in human beings.
I've been snoring the last few weeks. I had COVID when I got back from Australia, and like Chris said, you were snoring quite bad, and I was like, oh, I need to do what Kev does, put the tape on your mouth.
For sure, yeah. I've taken up almost every night for nearest, damn it, probably 2 years. And it was life-changing for me, the mouth tape. And it has been for so many others, because it just gets you out of the habit of breathing through your mouth at night, which is snoring a lot of the time. And not always. Some people just sleep with their mouths open, but you're drying your mouth out. So it starts to have other effects on the body. So you dry your airway, you're far more susceptible to sore throats. You're far more susceptible to having a blocked nose because you're not using it at night. You wake up in the morning feeling thirsty. You wake up in the middle of the night sometimes feeling thirsty and sleeping with glasses and bottles of water next to your bed. And you can ask yourself, as an animal, when you're asleep, you shouldn't need to do that. There's enough water in your body when you go to sleep to sustain you as an organism. So why do you keep waking up drinking? It's because you're drying the airway.
I think some people would, because I've done this before, where like sometimes if I am in an anxious state or I'm stressed or something's going on in my life, breathing through the mouth seems more safe because you feel like you can get more air into your mouth. But I think I remember you telling us this when we were with you on that day was, think about your nose, how it's designed with the hairs. It filters everything into you. It's designed that way. And I think, we're not using it to its advantage of what's the nose there to do. The nose is to filter. You got to blow your nose, obviously, for like, you get bits of dust in there and things like that. But that's what it's there for. It's to filter the air into your body.
For sure, yeah. The nose has maybe sort of 20 odd different functions in the body. It will switch from one nostril to the other. It's your first line of defense against anything that's airborne. And all mammals should be breathing through their nose unless they're going through labor. And even then, most of the time, you should be trying to breathe as much through the nose as possible. Or you're in pain, or you're evading a predator. You're trying to get away. You're evading a predator. So really, we've just kind of picked up bad habits as humans in the last few hundred years. And the pace of life is much quicker. We do more talking now than ever. And talking is problematic, which is why people at call centres and nurses...
I remember you saying that, the call centres, they're just constantly on the phone, and I'm a big talker. I talk a lot, but I think since I've been in New Zealand, I've wanted to talk less. I love doing the podcast and I love talking to people, but sometimes I just want to sit in silence for the day.
Well, this is it. And, if people are watching this back now, if you watch over the next few minutes, you know, try and listen to what we're saying, but also listen to what happens when we talk and we get a lot of words out in each sentence, and we talk for as long as possible, and we keep on talking, and then we do this. Okay, now the first time we did that was when we were born. The brain kind of knows that that's not a fear response, but it also doesn't know at the same time. So if you're gasping like this hundreds of times per hour as part of your job, if you're talking all day and you're gasping all the time, you're also hyperventilating by doing that. So it's a bit like getting a workout.
Yeah.
And everybody will kind of familiarize with this in terms of, you can have a long conversation with somebody on the phone, a loved one or whatever. It might even be a nice conversation, but at the end of it, after 40 minutes or an hour, you feel wiped out.
Yeah.
Because you've been constantly talking and constantly gasping and hyperventilating as part of that. So we have to be able to, like you said, the most important thing with breath is to be able to witness what's going on. Awareness is absolutely critical in terms of understanding the connection between breath and physiology. Knowledge is power as well, you know, and the more we understand about why our body does certain things rather than reacting to it.
Yeah, responding to it.
The less anxious we'll be, you know. And but the thing is, Pippa, is that you can change your physiology. You can change your biochemistry. You can alter the sensitivity of your chemoreceptors in your body. So you've got central chemoreceptors in the brain, and you've got peripheral chemoreceptors in your body, in your heart, and all over your body. So you can change the flexibility of these chemoreceptors so that you breathe less, or that your drive to breathe is less. But that takes practice. It's hard work. Ask any free diver, and they'll tell you that to do that, you have to give your body quite a lot of CO2. And the thing is that CO2 makes you panic. Yeah, and there's been loads of scientific studies that CO2 is connected to your amygdala-driven fear response as an animal. And that feeling that you get when you hold your breath, that panicky feeling to take a breath, your diaphragm will drop, you'll feel your neck close up, your intercostal muscles will contract. You'll feel this panic to breathe, but you can alter that. So if you can alter your biochemistry in terms of how you drive to breathe as an animal, can you change your anxiety? Can you change how anxious you feel in certain environments? The answer is yeah, you can. So
you have the power to do that, and that's, I think, the key word for me is awareness, and that's what I try and do with my clients is awareness. Like, you know, I believe, like you mentioned, the word release is like, I mean, I don't think I use that a lot, to be honest. I say, you know, you're moving through something.
Sure.
Because you are moving through something, but you know, for me, exactly, you know, there's a big craze to release trauma at the moment, and you see it everywhere. And I think people ask me about it because I have done a lot of work on my trauma and what makes me triggered and what brings anxiety in my life. But the self-awareness has been the biggest thing for me, because I know that I won't purposely put myself in a situation where I know I'm going to be triggered, for example. But how life goes is you will experience things that will ultimately trigger you, which makes you go into that panic, fight or flight, you know, the anxiety. But one thing I'm really proud of myself for is that now I don't wallow in them for too long. You know, the anxiety doesn't stay around for too long. The reaction isn't as bad. You know, I respond a bit better. And I think that comes with self-awareness, because I know I know more about myself, and that's the self-awareness. I know more about me. I've got to know me. I've got to know what makes me tick, what pisses me off, what does this, you know. And that's what I say to clients is, you know, get to know yourself, and not just about what you like watching for TV and what you like eating and all this. It's the stuff that makes you fearful, like that scares you, that really annoys you, that grates on you, that, you know, that makes you fearful of living. And then you start to take power back. And then the breath, for me, I think that's the word I probably felt when I was on the beach. I just felt powerful. I felt like I was in my power when I was breathing. And obviously I cried, and we came out of it, and people are hugging me, and it's just the best thing. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps actually now thinking about it. Like when you come out of it, people are just you come out of a breath work and you're probably doing it for about 2 or 3 minutes and it seems so long, but it's not. Like short, but it seems longer. And everyone's doing it with you. There's about 100 people on the beach, and you come out of it, and everyone's just hugging each other and holding space for you and giving you love. And it's just the best. It's just the best. It's the best feeling.
Yeah, for sure. It's quite powerful that you know what you're saying there about self and getting to know self. And I say this to people every day. You know, you've got to be able to go inward. And the thing is that as human beings, we don't really want to go in.
No.
We don't really want to be quiet. We don't really want to be alone.
We don't want to be. We want to do.
100%, yeah. And this is one of the problems all the time, because doing tends to give us dopamine. And as animals, we're constantly jumping up and down with dopamine all the time. Even that hug on the beach and that presence that you feel after hyperventilating, it's kind of dopamine rush that you get through co-regulation. When you do that on your own, it's very different.
Yeah.
If you're sat on your own, you're doing your breath work in a field in the middle of nowhere on your own, there's no co-regulation, it's just you. So does that cause different adaptation in the body? Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And so it's exactly the same with the cold. But sometimes when you go inward, sometimes when it's quiet and all you've got is you, there's no phone, there's just silence and you, it's ugly. It's not nice. And you know,
it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
It's uncomfortable, and it's about making the uncomfortable comfortable.
Yeah.
This is why Wim Hof's doing this thing. This is why, you know, this craze is taking off. Is because we've been too comfortable for too long. But to be uncomfortable means that you have to sit with self. You have to sit with the things. You have to witness your shadow. And Carl Jung, wrote about this, and witness your shadow, witness your narcissistic tendencies, and everybody has them.
They do. That's what I'm saying. Like people, that word's been thrown around a lot too. Is she's a narcissist, he's a narcissist, and I read a book that there is 1 in 7 is, but actually we all have the tendencies. We all have a shadow. We all have a dark side. We all have a mean side. But it's allowing it up to, like you said, it's sitting yourself in a mirror and saying, what are my faults and what are my things that I don't like about myself? And that isn't the true you. From a spiritual perspective, you are just pure love, but you also have all this baggage of life, of childhood, of trauma, of abuse, of different things that actually make you who you are. And that is power, because I think we try and suppress all that stuff. We suppress the shadow. We don't want to speak to it. We don't want to see it. But when you do, it's the most powerful thing you can do, because you start to think, well, there's nothing I don't know now. I'm seeing myself naked with shadow, everything. And now I can see myself for who I am. And it doesn't haunt you anymore. It doesn't sit there and niggle at you. And that's why breath, I think, as I think I mentioned before we started chatting about, if I'm very spiritual, as you know, but if you look at the Bible, there's so much in the Bible about breath, the breath of life, the breath of God, the breath of it's huge. It's been around since, like you said, it's not a new thing. It's something we've all been through since the dawn of time.
Sure, absolutely. But like I said, the answers are found with self. And the minute they cut the cord, you're on your own. And regardless of who you marry, regardless of the people that make you feel less vulnerable, people that make you feel safe in your life, or your pets, Willow there, safety. And we, as human beings, we need to be safe. As organisms, we need to be safe. And co-regulation is part of that. But every now and again, you need to understand the self, and who that is. And that's where you're going to find most of the answers. Yeah, it's ugly, it's not nice. Look at yourself, you're envious. We block people. Why do we block them? Why do we remove them? Why do we shake our heads at them? Why are we not happy with other people sometimes? Why do we feel envious towards other people? Check you. And I've done this. I've blocked people on Instagram. Because I'm like, whoa, Kevin, that's you. That is you. Check yourself. You know, that's not them. You know, and that's the most important thing. You have to learn these lessons about yourself, and then you'll start to feel yourself. You'll start to connect your mind back into your body rather than being severed from your physiology. And that's what's happening with the more and more technology and the more people that we get with. We separate, and we need to be with self. It's just so important that we do that. And cold water is the same thing. It's okay getting into big group sessions and everybody's puffing and panting and celebrating, everybody's together. And they say, oh, we've had an amazing experience. It's fantastic. You know, what did you learn about yourself? What happened in there? What did it show you? And the answer is that they don't know. And then they go home, then they'll order a tank or a Lumi tub or whatever it is that they're going to get. They'll go and get in the cold on their own and they'll step out. Although that's not the same. Why? It's because you're on your own. And the adaptation is different. Because it will deliver different messages when you're on your own. It'll offer different messages in a river, to a lake. It'll offer different messages in the dark. Go and get in the cold, in the sea, on the beach in New Zealand at 3 o'clock in the morning when there's nobody there. See how you feel then. And exactly. Because even the thought of that is provoking to say no.
Fear, fear of,
So your autonomic nervous system is even thinking safety straight away. Go and do it. What does it give to the body? If you read the book Becoming the Iceman, Wim Hof explains that he went out in the middle of the night and jumped from a rock that he knew where the river was underneath it, but he wanted to jump in the dark. So he jumped into a black hole, a void, knew the water was there. What adaptation does that create?
That's like the unknown, isn't it? That's jumping into the unknown, and that is going into shadow, into darkness. And so many of us don't want to do that. And with you saying doing the breath work with the 100 people on the beach, that gives us a sense of safety because we are tribal. You know, that's part of our DNA. We're in tribes, and it creates that sense of safety that we're in a tribe and we're safe. And it's quite funny as well, when you want to talk about that. I always sit in the middle. So I'm at the front, but I'm in the middle. And you think about like animals and mammals that, you know, when they're in herds, the outer are less safe and the inner are the more safe. I mean, birds do it when they fly. They'll fly in a certain shape, and
sure,
we do the same.
Of course we do, because we're organisms and we're made up of billions, trillions of cells, just the same as the animals are. So we need to think of it at a scientific level. But you mentioned religion before, you know, Jesus. And I am not religious. I am not spiritual. And I know that lots of people are. I will do spirituality if people want it. And it's amazing because it opens people up. It's a fantastic thing. But, you know, Jesus, the Prophet Muhammad, Moses, the Buddha, these people, they disappeared into the woods and caves and the mountains, and they were gone for months or whatever, and they were gone for long periods of time on their own. And you know, they mastered the self. They realized exactly what was going on in the body and the mind, not on a scientific level in those days. They figured it out. What the mind was doing. So when they came back, they seemed like divine creatures, like divine beings, because people had just never seen anybody so present. They weren't used to it. So, and we write tales about them now, you know, in the Bible, etc., etc. So they just became really fully aware of presence. And the thing is that we're never in it. We're never in presence. We're always everywhere else. Sadhguru, you know, talks about this a lot. He said, you're living a dream. You're living a fantasy. It doesn't exist. It's not real. Your car, you don't own one. It's on the drive, wherever you are now, but you don't own one. You can't see it. It doesn't exist. You know? And what is this?
I know. Yeah.
It's not reality, you know? You can't live your life like that. Eckhart Tolle, you know, he talks a lot about the power of now. What is presence? it's this. There is nobody else. My wife's in the next room with my son, but they don't exist. I can't hear them. I can't see them. They're not real. And that is very difficult concept for people to get their heads around.
No.
And it makes you, it's one of those moments, oh my God, it's like, how big is the universe? It's
Well,
like,
it's that sometimes your brain can't comprehend it. Because we just can't fathom it. You know, it's like Chris, my husband now, he's into the stars and astronomy, and he has an amazing telescope, and we always do it because we watch the Hubble field, and you know how like that small part of the universe that they looked into, the James Webb images came out recently, and you just can't comprehend it. But I think about, like, we're watching Eckhart Tolle in March in Auckland. Can't wait to see him. And
wow.
you know,
like Yoda.
Yeah, like, but I think Chris and I actually said we think nothing phases him. We think like he's an enlightened soul because nothing phases him. And I think, you know, because again, he's mastered self, and you know,
nothing phases him because it hasn't happened.
Yeah,
he's always he's in the present.
I know.
So much more than anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah,
you know, if he was around 2,000 years ago, he would have been Jesus.
Yeah, I know. And I think, you know, when we think of, like, you know, parallel universes and parallel times, and you know that, you know, from a spiritual aspect, they say, you know, all your past lives, they're all happening now. There's no past, future. It's all happening in a linear. And I'm just, you can't comprehend it. It just doesn't, because it doesn't make logical sense to the brain. And I think, but that's why when you do breath work, something's happening in the body where the soul and the 3D body, this suit that you're in, is having some sort of like dance. And that's how I see it, is that, you know, your soul within you is the self, is the true self, and, you know, your higher self, and as we call it in hypnosis, the subconscious. And I think there's something going on with the 3D self and the 5D self when you're doing breath work. There's something, like I said, it's like a dance. And that's how I envision it. And it's a beautiful thing. Like you said, it's happening together. And that's a beautiful thing to see that way.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely beautiful. And you know, it's a miracle. It really is. And the thing is that with your breath, because of the organism's ability to remember, and this is why I say everybody should read The Body Keys to Scores. It's amazing, really, how he's explained what the body holds on to. It has to. The organism has to remember. It's a given. If it didn't, none of us would be here.
Yeah.
And even with the very first life on Earth, the cells had to remember. They had to adapt and then remember, so that they didn't do the same things that got the cells destroyed in the first place, or under pressure, or frightened. So they'd adapt, evolve, and billions of years later, we have us from those same cells on Earth right at the very, very beginning. And the nature of the cell, even in the human body, is to survive. So we can only put two and two together then, in the fact that as human beings, the organism wants to survive. And how it does that is by storing things from the past that potentially threatened us. So your traumas, your PTSD, the things that you've witnessed, your abuse, etc., the things that we do not want to visit again, the things that made us
yeah
the things that made us go into fight or flight. That's why you still see your trauma. It's why you still see places. It's why you still smell what it was like in the room. It's why you still feel it. Even me talking about this to you, the listeners, it fires it into the brain. You see it, don't you?
Yeah.
And the reason you see it is because your nervous system won't allow you to unsee it. And people say that, you know, I've had EFT now and I don't see it the same anymore. Perfect. So you've been allowed to sort of reprocess it, and the images are not quite the same. So it's giving you some kind of relief from it. If the animal goes back into that scenario, or whatever it is, you may walk past a person in the street on the happiest day of your life. They may wear the same perfume or cologne or aftershave as the person who hurt you once, and it will just fire you straight back in. Because your body has the ability to get you back to safety. And Charles Darwin wrote about this in 1872. He said that the fundamental purpose of human emotions is to initiate movement in the organism to get it back to safety, to physical equilibrium, which is parasympathetic state. If you don't get back to parasympathetic state, you can't mate and evolve and spread your genetics. So the whole thing is based on genetics. The whole thing is based on science. I'm not bursting anybody's bubble with the spiritual stuff, but the body.
Well, there is the science that interests me, because Chris is scientist and he has both aspects of science and spirituality, and it's great to see both sides of it. You know, I get a lot of spiritual happiness from breath work, and that makes me happy and that gives me a lot of joy. But I also know scientifically something's happening in my body. I can feel it, you know, and that's kind of, again, becoming self-aware of the body too. You know, it's, you know, self-awareness with thought and your soul and things like that. But, you know, becoming self-aware of your own body, you know, the feelings in your body. Like I said, the latter end of last year, I knew it was anxiety that was causing the heart flutters, you know, that like ball in the throat, and then the deep feeling in the tummy. And I was like, oh, what's this feeling? And you start to pick up on it. And I was like, okay, it's anxiety. And I know it is. But part of my brain wanted to say it was something else. You need to go to the doctor. You need to go and figure out what this is. But I just knew this is my body going into like a stress response.
Sure.
And
so
and it gives me, but it makes me feel in control. It makes me feel in control of, okay, this is what it is. And how can I help? You know, how can I help myself in this? And how can I respond to it and acknowledge it? That's a big word for me, is acknowledging things. Because I think with breath as well, is it brings up so much emotion on the scale of emotion. And like you said, you know, Abraham Hicks has the emotional scale. And, you know, with clients who come to me who are angry because someone's wronged them or hurt them, or sadness because they've lost a loved one, you know, people try and suppress them because they don't like those emotions. They don't like those feelings. They don't produce good feelings in the body. But isn't that the key? You need to know why were we given love and fear? Why are we given two latter things? Is because they're actually coexisting together, because we need to know the difference between the two.
As cruel as it is, but that is it, spot on, 100%. And from the minute you're born, in fact, even while you're in the womb, your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems are already working together. Like you said, love and fear, hot and cold, the opposites, are working with one another. As soon as you're born, you come out, you gasp, you take a breath in, your lungs empty, you gasp, you take your first breath, you're cold and you're frightened. Okay? So the organism is frightened after 9 months of safety.
Yeah.
What does your mother do? She picks you up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go from mouth breathing, and then you switch to nasal breathing. Why do you switch to nasal breathing?
Safety, like calmness, like bringing the calmness. Yeah.
Of course you do, but you're forced to breathe through your nose. Why are you forced to breathe through your nose? Nobody's ever answered it. Are you going to be the first one to answer it? Why are you forced to breathe through your nose as a baby?
I think it's because that's what we're meant to do. That question, Kev, makes me think. You know, it's the same concept, spirituality, of what's growing your fingernails right now, what's growing your hair. There's a scientific behind it, but that's the same as nose breathing. How does the baby know to breathe through the nose?
Sure, but they're forced to breathe through the nose, and the reason they're forced to breathe through the nose is because we have to eat, and you can't eat and breathe through your nose, through your mouth at the same time. So basically, I'm trying to outline what's happening in the organism. Forget the human aspect. You come out, sometimes you're crying, fight or flight, and then you come back here, it's okay, you warmth again, so you get warmth of mother's skin, and you smell your mother, you also smell breast milk. So what do? You eat, and what happens when you're eating?
Yeah.
You're breathing through your nose. Your nervous system recognizes then that nasal breathing is connected to safety and nourishment. Your tummy's filling up at the same time. And then from then on, it uses that same system, but it uses it forever. They put you down in your crib. You're quiet, you're nourished, you're full. And then you wake up
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you feel vulnerable. Where is my caregiver? She's not there. You scream. The emotions. 1872, Darwin. Emotional response. Tears, noise. Why? Because it worked last time. Because I got back to safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually you crying, baby. It's okay. Shh, I've got you.
Yeah.
Nose again, and so on and so on.
It's repetitive consistency as well. And then what happens is we get older, something happens, it makes it go, it switches it.
Exactly that. But you cannot remove the fundamental instinct of the animal to get back to safety. And whilst you have that, certain things make us feel safer. Dopamine is one of them. Serotonin, oxytocin, these chemicals, they make us feel safe. So the whole thing is kind of packaged. It's a bit of an unfortunate one, but in terms of your breathing, because the body keeps the score, if you lie on your back or you sit up and you start to breathe in a certain way, i.e. the Wim Hof method, TUMO, cyclic hyperventilation, you start to breathe in a rapid way, in a way that mimics hyperventilating or your traumas, your PTSD. It will take you back there. It doesn't want you to hyperventilate. It's like, whoa, Pippa, what are you doing? No. Why are you breathing like this? Why are you making your blood so alkaline? Why are you affecting biochemistry so much? What's the matter with you? Think you're dying. So it'll feed you some emotion from the past. And that's why you can't help, because when you're emotional and you start crying, you have to start breathing. Normally. It'll get you to do it, to stop doing it as many ways as it can. Which is why when you see the Wim Hof program on telly, Gabby Logan, I think her name was, or Gabby Yorith, whatever she was, the presenter, she was hysterical crying because she witnessed past, emotional past. She might not have seen images, but she felt it.
Yeah.
And what's to say that we're not each day living the emotional feelings and turmoil of our 8-year-old selves from when our traumas were, or 12-year-olds, or 15-year-olds, or 20-year-olds traumas. That's how we might be feeling each day. So there is, we can use regressive breath work and transformative breath work, biodynamic breath work, to get the human body, the organism, to step back a little bit and regress by putting it under stress, putting it under pressure. And this allows us potentially to reprocess that moment that we were in the past from a very unique perspective as an older person in a safe space, rather than it being a frightening space held by the facilitator. But when you go and do a Wim Hof session, or you go and hyperventilate, or do a holotropic breath session, they don't tell you that your body's going to think that it's dying, so it's going to make you feel as though you've left your body, or you're going to become so hypoxic that you possibly might even pass out, and your body will reset you to take a breath. They just say, come and release your trauma. Yeah.
I think one of the most powerful meditations I do is breath, like breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, or even 6. I've done different types, but when you do the breath, it seems to be very calming for clients. And I think that's probably one of the favorite ones. Like, for example, before we finish, Kev, is if you were to give someone listening the best breath work session to do, what would you get people to do if they could do it daily?
I think, I love the Wim Hof method. I think it's amazing, really.
Yeah.
And he's brought something to the forefront, or certainly I think his son has, with this Wim Hof fundamentals, that all the kind of money side of it. But bless him, Wim just wants to help people.
Yeah.
And his message is that if you put your body under stress by using the breath, like you do on the beach, etc., it will cause the body to make adaptation. However, some people are in such a physical state of fight or flight already that they may find it very difficult to hyperventilate or do the Wim Hof method, because it'll just make them too emotional or too frightened to be that hypoxic. Or hypocapnic, low CO2, low oxygen. Okay, which is why a lot of my clients that I work with, they struggle to do the Wim Hof method if they're suffering with panic disorder or anxiety, and getting them to do that might actually make them worse.
Yeah.
So
depends on the person. Yeah.
Depends on the person. It's not one size shoe fits all. There's some people that have anxiety that this has been life changing for the Wim Hof method. What I would say is I would say investigate your own breath by starting to breathe slowly.
Yeah.
By starting to focus in on your own breath and try and connect your mind into your body. Feel how the inhale is different. The inhale is active. The exhale is passive. When you're relaxed, they feel different.
Yeah.
Even if you're listening to this now and you take a sharp breath in, you get sort of tingles around your body. You get sort of, you can almost feel your vagus nerve sort of pins and needly a little bit. There's an aftershock of that breath in your body, whereas the exhale, it feels different in the body. So nasal breathing feels very different to mouth breathing also. So study the breath. Google what they do, what the difference is between an inhale and an exhale. But what I would say is that certainly if you're in an anxious state, and you can try this now while you're listening to the podcast, if you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds and you exhale for 6 seconds, okay, see how you feel when you get to 6. Okay, so if you breathe in for 4 and then exhale for 6. Or longer, or shorter. Yeah.
Yeah.
You always feel relaxed
at
6. You always feel more relaxed at the end of your exhale. If you don't feel relaxation at the end of your exhale, ask yourself why. There may be something adrift. All you might feel at the end of your exhale is a real strong urge to breathe. If that is the case, then your bolt score might not be really good, and it might be through an overactive or oversensitive chemoreceptors in your body. That could indicate that you could be chronically hyperventilating in life. And signs of chronic hyperventilation are cold hands and feet all the time, dryness in the morning, sort of constantly drinking water all the way through the day, yawning and sighing all the time, early afternoons, fatigue.
That's me. I'm always yawning.
So you've got to ask yourself, why is that? Why am I constantly yawning and sighing or holding your breath? Is a sign. Apnea is a sign that you could be overbreathing as a human being, as an organism. So sometimes we witness ourselves holding our breath when we open emails, or if the phone goes, we're holding our breath, or sometimes we'll just be doing daily tasks or concentrating on doing something. Yeah. Okay, I was holding my breath then. You realise if you notice that you're holding your breath through the day, it's a good possibility that you might be starting to hold your breath at night sometimes. Yeah. And that can be something that we call sleep apnea. Sometimes that can wake you up, like you're having dreams that you're falling, or you're tripping up on something, or crashing your car. You wake up on your breath. Okay? Another sign of hyperventilating, sometimes getting up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. Why is that happening? Yeah. Sometimes that can be connected to too much mouth breathing, because your body can't regulate your hormones properly whilst you're hyperventilating. So investigate it. There's some amazing books out there. Breath by James Nestor is an incredible book. The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk. The Breathing Cure, Patrick McKeown. Just absolutely amazing books. I mean, literally anything that you wanted to read about respiratory health can be seen in The Oxygen Advantage, The Breathing Cure, Patrick McKeown. Just absolutely Bible for breath work. And I'm so looking forward to training with them again in February. Yeah,
it sounds amazing. Before we finish, I did want to ask you for personal, info is, what about breath work with birth? Because one thing I've been looking at is hypnobirthing. I don't know what, that's obviously about breath. And is that something that you would think is crucial to do for birthing?
Well, I'd say almost definitely it is. And if you look at the statistics of emergency C-sections, a lot of the time it's because babies what they, babies having difficulties,
Yeah.
or babies stressed. So they've got monitors around the outside of your tummy. Baby stress, meaning that the baby's heart rate's going up, and sometimes that can be caused by the mum who's hyperventilating. I think I mentioned this. The thing is that with hyperventilation, it causes problems with how you uptake oxygen because of something called the Bohr effect in the body. So if you're offloading too much carbon dioxide, it kind of affects the relationship between oxygen and hemoglobin. So as oxygen comes into your lungs, it attaches to hemoglobin in your blood cells, in your red blood cells. Mm-hmm. And if there's not enough carbon dioxide in the blood, this relationship kind of becomes dissociate. Yeah. So you end up having the wrong shift of an oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay, check out what that is, Google it. And oxygen doesn't really readily attach to hemoglobin then because of the lack of carbon dioxide. But of course, because baby's getting oxygen through the umbilical cord, and baby's not getting any oxygen either. So if the mother hyperventilates, the baby's going to feel it. Yeah. Yeah. So if the mother is breathing correctly and she's breathing deep and she's been practicing throughout pregnancy, certainly third trimester, start to slow breathing down and never holding your breath. Yeah. Yeah. Never hold their breath. Because although hypoxic might be okay for you, might not be so clever for baby, because we just don't know what conditions baby may have, etc. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Never hold your breath. Don't get into cold water either whilst you're pregnant. No. Third trimester, you may get away with third trimester. I wouldn't say ever get into sort of cold water any sort of lower than sort of 15 degrees, but have a look, Google it. Yeah. You can get in third trimester. First trimester, do not get into cold water. Okay. Because sometimes the body can walk. Okay. Yeah. But in terms of breathing, slow your breathing down. Use your diaphragm, breathe deeply, and try and improve your biochemistry by improving your biomechanics. Breathe through your nose. Yeah. I know I mentioned mouth taping before, and my wife taped her mouth closed during all of pregnancy. She taped her mouth closed at night, and she did amazing during the birth. It was in a birthing pool, but I just can't underestimate how important it is. Yeah, I'm excited for that. Slow your breathing down, slow breathing, deep breathing. If you remember the words LSD, long, slow, deep breaths. Yeah, that's the way forward. Controlled, as much of the nose as possible. Yeah, because the nose obviously filters out everything. It compresses the air as it goes into the alveoli, the small air sacs of the lungs. It's nitric oxide down into your lungs, which is a natural vasodilator. So you get blood vessel dilation of the lungs. This helps with gas exchange. But not only that, if your body can cope with higher CO2 levels, it changes just so much in human beings. It really, really does. It improves your health dramatically. If you eat correctly. So important. Yeah, I could talk to you for ages, Kevin. I think we should come on another one just to kind of go into other things that I want to ask you, but running out of time. So I've just enjoyed learning more about it, and I'm excited to do more breath work, and I need to read that book, The Body Keeps the Score, for sure. So I will definitely get you back on for a part 2, I think, because I think there's a lot more we could talk about and there's so much to it. So thank you so much for your time. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me on.
You're welcome.
Let me know when you want to do another one. I know this one took a while, but
no, it's fine. It's all divine timing, and I think I'll definitely put all your links on the show notes as well, so people can find you, and anyone who is local to me, where I was in the UK, go and see Kev. I'm sure my one of my best friends came and saw you the other week, Steph and Tom, so they were with you the other week. Yeah,
of course, right, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so if you are local, just go and see him, because he really help. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So humbling. Thank you.
Thanks, Kev, and I'll speak to you soon, and take care, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed the episode I did, and we'll be back for a part 2 shortly. So take care, guys.